Good morning, my brothers and sisters. To thee I pledge my troth. It's a promise often given at the altar. So what does it mean? It means a lifelong pledge of faithfulness to one another that have decided to become one flesh. It's something to me, it's something akin to you and me forever. So we get the same idea and same word root in our word betrothed. So this identifies, my betrothed identifies a unique person that I'm going to give this pledge to, this truth to, this faithful covenant or promise to. And by faithful, we certainly mean faithful with our emotional as well as our bodily integrity. So God hates divorce. And I didn't get that from the Bible. I got it from all my divorced friends. None of us has stood righteously before God as we have looked at some of the principles in Matthew chapter 5. And similarly, few will stand righteously even today. So far in Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount, we have heard that adultery is serious business and it has serious consequences. And we've heard that taking such a position before God puts a soul in peril. And Jesus then raises the bar, saying that even lustful intent equals adultery, and that radical measures should be taken against it. And then today, as if that's not enough, Jesus is going to go on to make an equivalence of divorce to adultery. This is from Matthew chapter 5, verse 31. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So this follows, just the structure of this follows his pattern that he's been saying. You've heard it said, but now I say. So Jesus is claiming authoritative jurisdiction over the practice of marriage and divorce. He's clarifying the truths of the Old Testament. Now, Jesus is a big fan of marriage. He invented it, he supplied it, he endorsed it, he blessed it. For many people, it's the greatest adventure and spiritual refining process that they will ever go on. So the culture at the time, as does ours actually, had a very widely accepted practice of easy divorce. And Jesus is saying, I don't accept that, and neither should you. He's the great covenant keeper, and it glorifies me for you to display that character of mine. So God intends that marriage not end in divorce. In fact, people intend that marriage not end in divorce too. Every person at a wedding is there in the anticipation and the hope that this marriage would be a success. And every participant in the wedding, every bride and every groom, does not plan on it ending in divorce. So everybody on the wedding day agrees with God. Mark chapter 10 has a similar passage. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. They are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. So he's saying, hold fast, be rolled into a ball together like two different colors of Play-Doh. Have a new relationship with one's father and mother. But be careful, because one can do this wrong. And one thing we can do wrong is to violate marriage by being sexually immoral outside of marriage. That is, one can seek something outside the boundaries of a marriage that is meant only for inside the boundaries of marriage. The Greek word for this, the general word for this, is porneia. It's where we get our term pornography. So it's a big tent word that includes adultery against the marriage, prostitution, fornication, any kind of zipper activity that's outside of marriage. And this concept may give legitimate reason for an offended spouse to end a marriage and then free the offended spouse to remarry. So it gives the offended person relational liberty. Of course, that person must also not be offending. So that is, adultery in the marriage frees the offended spouse from the reality of adultery after the marriage. So of note, entering into a marriage covenant before God, and all marriages are before God, is an agreement to the right principles within the marriage, and an agreement to the legitimate exceptions that can end a marriage. One cannot first say, I agree to what makes a marriage, and then later say, but I'm going to make my own rules on how to end it. So we can, here in our Matthew chapter 5 passage, divorce for the wrong reason. and then cause the divorced spouse to commit adultery at their second marriage. So if a marriage is illegitimately ended, the spiritual peril does not end at the divorce lawyer's office. So let's make some conclusions here. Number one, covenants fused from another planet are not easily erased with a mere signature on this planet. So divorce for the wrong reason puts the offended party at risk, and even puts at risk the person that they may remarry. Now, before we stop, I want to say is that there's not a person listening to this podcast who is not touched by divorce. And I want to end with grace and hope for those who have stumbled if there's repentance. I don't seek to shame a single person. In fact, this little podcast is given in faithfulness, I hope, to what Jesus warns about on this topic in Matthew and our passages today. So if you are single, my prayer for you is that you find one to pledge your troth to. And if you are married, my prayer is that you continue to keep your troth. Thanks for listening.